Golda Meir, the person you call the old lady.
The old lady.
Could she do more than Menachem Begin to make peace?
I'm sorry to say yes.
Because
Begin may be hurted by this, but yes.
When Palestinian terrorists from Yasser Arafat's Al-Fatah killed 37 Israelis yesterday, they struck a blow not just against Israel and Menachem Begin, but against Egypt and Anwar Assadat. For the PLO fears Sadat's peace initiative. They want no peace between Egypt and Israel. They don't want Sadat's 40 million Egyptians out of the fight against Israel. And they know that their attack yesterday will stiffen Begin's demand that there be no Palestinian state on Israel's border. But without that Palestinian state, Sadat himself has said, in effect, there can be no peace. We returned recently from Egypt, where we filmed a profile of Sadat on the eve of the publication of his surprisingly candid autobiography. We begin our film on the night of another terrorist attack a month ago. Sadat's good friend, editor Yusuf al-Sabai, had been shot down that day in Cyprus by Palestinians who thought he was pro-Israel. Sadat went to pray that night in the mosque at Al-Hussein. It was the anniversary of the birthday of the Prophet Muhammad. Security guards are scattered through the crowd of worshippers because the terrorists have sworn to kill everyone who went to Israel seeking peace, including President Sadat. The irony is that as a young man, Sadat himself had been imprisoned by the British occupiers of his country for complicity in a political assassination. During the 1940s, Sadat spent years, literally years, in prisons like this one on the outskirts of Cairo, in wet cells, damp cells, bug-infested cells. At one time, he spent 18 months in solitary confinement in a cell just like this one, 6 feet by 8 feet, a mat on the floor, armies of cockroaches inside, he said. It was called simply Cell 54. That cell no longer exists, but the memory of it has never left Sadat. In 1975, he personally struck the first blow with a pickaxe at the wall of a prison like the one in which he had been held. Cell 54. How bad was it?
Terrible. But I must say this. This has formed my inner resistance. Really, because I overcame this. The last 6 months, they were the most happiest time that I lived or will ever live.
Why?
Why? Well, in 2 places, you shall always find yourself, your real self. Number 1 is prison. Number 2 is war.
Sadat was in Cell 54, as we said, for complicity in a political assassination. Earlier, the British occupiers had sent him to prison for helping 2 German spies in World War II. He saw the Germans, then battling the British in North Africa, as allies in his determination to rid Egypt of the British. In fact, says Sadat, he had long looked up to Germany and its leader. People write of you as a Nazi sympathizer.
Any young boy at that time, believe me, hailed Hitler because we didn't know, except that the man has returned the confidence to the German people after the defeat of the First World War.
It had nothing to do with his attitude about Jews.
At all. At that time, you know, the Jews were living with us, among us here. Some of them were ministers. All our economy was in their hands. We never knew this discrimination at all.
Yet in writing in his book about Egypt's returning the bodies of Israeli soldiers to Israel after the Yom Kippur War, Sadat says, applying the Jewish principle of putting a price on everything, the Israelis began to negotiate the price they expected to pay to recover their dead. When one reads, applying the Jewish principle of putting a price on everything, one says, Anwar Assadat, he is anti-Semitic, anti-Jewish.
Anti-Semite, this is something that has been invented to blackmail anyone and to scare anyone. No. I myself, I am a Semite. How could I be anti-Semite? They are my cousins.
Some of those cousins turned up in Cairo recently. American rabbis from the Synagogue Council of America. They met with Sadat at his home, and though he told them he remained adamant that Israel give up all settlements in the Egyptian Sinai, the rabbis and their wives were obviously moved by their hour-long conversation with him. One of them, Rabbi Wolf Kelman of the Jewish Theological Seminary in New York, told Sadat that what Pope John XXIII had done to bring Catholics and Jews together, Sadat was doing for Muslims and Jews.
The fact that we rabbis of the Jewish faith, sitting in what is really the palace of the pharaohs on the bank of the Nile, a place which is associated with the slavery of the Jews and also some glorious periods. The whole drama struck me at that second, and the pair I thought it was Pope John. The only pair I could think of.
To understand Sadat, says Sadat himself, you must go to the village where he was born, to Mit Abul Kum in the Nile Delta, a small green enclave in Egypt's sea of desert sand. But his roots go deep there.
You can't imagine the happiness whenever I think of it, not only visit it, whenever I think of it. As much as I remember always, whenever I open my eyes, I see the evergreen, vast areas.
Those vast green areas are in the eyes of the beholder, where only 4% of Egypt's land, and only along the shore of the Nile, is green.
Whenever you seek simplicity, that's happiness. It is in the village.
Sadat learned to read and write just like this, he says, on the bare floor of his village school studying the Quran. But when he was still a youngster, his father, a government clerk, moved the family to this house in Cairo, and it was there that the pattern of his later life began to form. This is the tomb of Gamal Abdel Nasser, who made Sadat his vice president. And strangely enough, their journey to power began just across the street in the Cairo Military Academy back in the 1930s. It was here that Nasser and Sadat and their fellow officers began to think about driving the British occupiers from their country. Sadat was one of the leaders of the revolution of 1952 that sent Egyptian King Farouk and later the British packing. But the real leader of the revolution, the man who ignited the nationalism of Arabs everywhere, was Gamal Abdel Nasser. They lionized Nasser when he nationalized the Suez Canal and when he promised to propel the Egyptian economy into the 20th century. He overpromised. Poor Nasser, you write. His whole life was consumed by hate and tantrums. He regarded every man with suspicion. True?
This was his habit, really. His nature was this. He was suspicious even when he was 19 years old. It is not a new.
And you say that none of the officials in his entourage paid any regard to the interest of Egypt. They wanted nothing but to remain in power, motivated by hate and jealousy. That's a sad indictment of the people who ran this country.
It was degrading, really. One day,
Tapping phones,
concentration camps, all this.
and seizing private property in the name of state socialism.
The most degrading thing was any man wakes in the morning and finds himself nothing, wiped out completely. And sometimes also with the wiping out a concentration camp for him and his relatives and so.
How did you come to be known? Because people used to say, forgive me, Mr. President, I can say it now, but
Please.
Nasser's poodle, Nasser's Mr. Yes, Anwar Assadat.
Whenever one starts to criticize him openly, he loses his temper completely. I know this because he was my friend since we were 19. So, whenever there were anything to criticize, I used to do this between me and him, either at his home or in my home. Not openly.
No one expected you to survive, you know that.
I know, yes.
Everybody said, Nasser's poodle will last 6 weeks. And here
here he is?
4 to 6.
4 to 6 weeks.
Yes.
1973, the October War. Sadat sets out to avenge the defeat of 1967. His brother, a pilot, is killed in the first wave of the attack. The world's intelligence community is stunned as the Egyptians storm across the canal, breach Israel's invincible Bar-Lef line, and roll on into Sinai. Then comes an Israeli counteroffensive, sending hundreds of tanks westward across the canal. As most observers saw it, if a ceasefire had not finally been imposed, Israel might have annihilated Egypt's Third Army. But as Sadat tells it, it was the Egyptians who were stopped from wiping out the Israeli pocket of tanks and troops in Egypt only by the intervention of Henry Kissinger.
I told Henry, I can't afford to have them in this pocket. I told him, what is the position of the United States if I am going to liquidate this pocket? Immediately, he told me, I need not ask the Pentagon or the President. You will be hit by the Pentagon, because we shall never permit the Russian arms to make victory again. You shall be hit by the Pentagon, and very severely.
And so you say that Israel was saved by, as far as...
the United States. By the United States.
The October War gave Egypt back its manhood.
Right? Quite right. Quite right.
Kissinger had no comment on Sadat's version of the events of 1973, and the Israelis scoff at his claim. But there can be no doubt it was Soviet arms that enabled Sadat and Egypt to hit Israel with such force. Yet Sadat turned on the Soviets. He says they failed to live up to their promises of military aid, and worse, they wanted too much control over Egypt's affairs.
You say that they wanted to stab you in the back, too. They were waiting for you to fail in the October War, the Russians. They didn't believe that you could fight, and they were waiting until you were down to stick in the knife.
I was their best friend here, but I can't work as an agent, either for the Soviets or for anyone.
And they wanted you to be their agents in the Middle East?
Right. Right. Very simply like that.
Sadat insists that Egypt will wear no man's collar. Still, he wants aid for Egypt, billions of dollars worth from wherever he can get it, for the legacy he wants to leave his country. From his helicopter, he showed us miles and miles of desert, with just the beginning of a settlement scattered here and there. He spoke of the way the United States opened up its West, your drive to the West, he called it. That is what he wants to do in Egypt. Where we saw sand, he sees small cities and green fields.
The city that we are going to see now, in terms of Ramadan, is the first one. I'm planning for a chain of cities on this 100 kilometers. A chain of cities and factories. Pioneering, real pioneering.
But to do it, to help 40 million people overcome their staggering economic problems, he needs peace.
You say, thank God no responsible Israeli can doubt the genuine intention of the Arabs to reach peace. And that is what I set out to do by going to Jerusalem. Arafat does not agree with you. Assad does not agree with you. Hussein of Jordan hangs back. Khalid the same. All Arabs. Who do you represent beside Sadat and Egypt?
I can count Khalid in this.
Saudi Arabia, you think?
Yes, but let me stop at Egypt and Sudan only. 60 million, 2/3 of the Arab world.
Will you truly resign if the peace effort were to fail?
Be sure, whenever I am proved wrong, I have the courage to go to my parliament and say, here is my resignation because I was wrong in this, so and so and so.
I understand you told Henry Kissinger when you were in the United States, Henry, if you and I were working on this peace process, we could settle within 3 weeks. Why? What's there in Henry Kissinger that he could? You did say it.
I did say to Henry, it was not supposed to be declared like this, because Cy Vance is my dear friend. He is an honest man, really, very honest.
But Kissinger?
It is the approach.
He is more aggressive.
I can't add. I say this, he has got different approaches from those of Cy.
You seem to have respect, even a perverse kind of affection for Golda Meir, the person you call the old lady.
The old lady.
Could she do more than Menachem Begin to make peace?
I'm sorry to say yes.
Because
Begin may be hurted by this, but yes.
Moshe Dayan, if he were prime minister,
Yes.
is it possible that Menachem Begin, because he is Menachem Begin, because of his background, because of his family having been lost in the Holocaust, because of his commitment to his belief, is it possible he just cannot make peace?
You remember that before I made my initiative, I visited with Ceausescu of Romania, because Begin visited with him, and I know there is a close friendship between them, and there is a close friendship also between me and Ceausescu.
Yes.
I asked his view before I made my initiative. Ceausescu told me, the man is strong enough, the man is genuine for peace. I made my initiative after that.
Now, you have just seen Ceausescu again on your way back from the United States.
Right.
Has he changed his mind about Begin?
Not at all. I told him.
He still thinks?
I told him, here is the man that you told me about.
Yes.
Well, he told me, have some patience.
Everybody is telling you have some patience.
Right. In all languages. Patience en français.
Yes.
Patience in English. Geduld in German. There is a German proverb that says, Geduld bringt Rosen. The patience brings roses.
You believe that?
Yes.
But while Sadat practices patience, without doubt Palestinian guerrillas are planning more attacks inside Israel and conceivably inside Sadat's Egypt.